All right. And then we're just going to get into it as, right?
Do you want me to count us down to record our voices?
Yes. Okay. So Jessica's going to say 1, 2, 3, record. And then you just hit record on your computer. And then I'll say 1, 2, 3, clap. And then we'll clap together. And that'll hopefully help us sync up the audio so that we, just for editing, it helps. It's very official.
Okay. Super fancy.
I get it. All right.
Go ahead, Jess.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, record.
Okay. And then on the count of 3, clap. 1, 2, 3. All right. It sounds off on Skype, but it lines up when we edit.
No, it's totally fine. I get it.
Oh, man. All right. So let's get right into it then. Welcome back to the In Raw Life podcast. We're super excited to have you on an episode that we, both Jessica and I, feel is super important because we are exploring the Enneagram even deeper than we've ever gone before. Today, ladies and gentlemen, and mostly ladies, we have an Enneagram specialist. Her name is Jenn. She's fantastic from the little bit that I've got to know her so far, and I think you're going to love her. So Jenn, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Ooh, so tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this Enneagram craziness.
Oh, well, it's a long and twisted tale. The short SparkNotes version is I actually was introduced to the Enneagram in college. I was in an emerging leaders program, and we had been working through the Myers-Briggs and doing all of that work. And one of the other leaders in the school had said, have you ever looked at the Enneagram? And gave us this, like, if you are old enough to remember what mimeographed sheets are, they're like the sad purple thing before Xerox. And like, it was this Xerox copy of a mimeographed machine. It was in a grid. There were these big, ugly words. I'm 18. I'm like, over here, it says I'm fun and like to be with people. So I'm going to hang out with Myers-Briggs, and just ignored the Enneagram for 20 years. And then taught Myers-Briggs and taught the Strengths Finders. And as I was an educator and then became a faculty leader and an administrator, and loved working with people in that way. And then I had a change of leadership that really, destroyed a culture, and it destroyed me in many, many ways. And at that time, I rediscovered the Enneagram. I was introduced to the Enneagram again and was like, oh, okay, this is why this is upsetting to me. There were all kinds of red flags. There was all kinds of stuff that was just flat out wrong. But for me, understanding, oh, this is why it matters to me. Like, this is why this is hard for me. This is what my issues are in this. And here's how I can become a better version of myself, become back to who I really am. And oh, that's still not enough. That means I can't stay here. Like, it helped me see that even when I was working and being healthy, that the situation and environment I was in wasn't healthy. And that became very clear, because for a while it was like, is this me? Is this it? What's going on? All that kind of stuff. And so that's how I rediscovered the Enneagram, and then just kind of way down Alice and the rabbit hole and all of the things. And then decided, oh my gosh, this is so helpful. And I had switched careers by that point and was learning how much I was using the Enneagram in my work in conflict resolution as a speaker and as a coach. And I was like, I just need to do this. And so I got certified as a coach because I was using it so much. I wanted to learn more and more. And that is the short version of how I discovered the Enneagram.
I love it.
So cool. Yeah. The way that I learned Enneagram was because I was super into Myers-Briggs, and I said to Sierra, hey, take this test. Like, let's delve into it together. She's like, no, I've got something better. And then we were both obsessed ever since.
Yeah. I was like, I like to describe Myers-Briggs as like you do this, and this amazing, and you are just amazing. And Enneagram is like, oh, you actually have some stuff going on, and let's explore that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I always like to think of the Enneagram and all of these personality development tools, the Colby, the DISC, all of them, they all show us something different. But all the
Mhm.
others really show us what and how we do what we do. Like, here's what you're
Mm,
doing, here's how
yeah.
you do it, here's what you like, here's what you're really good at, here's how you make decisions, here's how you get information. It's all about how and what. And the Enneagram is like, oh, here's why. I'm going to
Oh,
dig down a little bit and I'm going to show you what's the bottom of that iceberg about why you're doing what you're doing. And some of those
mhm.
drivers behind your behaviors, hey, they're not super helpful. And we need to kind of cope with those. And we learn the most about ourselves when we're willing to look at the parts of ourselves we don't like. And
Yeah.
we're not super into that in our culture. We're like, here's what
Yeah.
your nose said, here's what we do, but
Yeah.
gosh, when we start to look at the parts of ourselves we don't really like, then we're, oh, here's how I can change. There becomes an option to deal with it rather than like, that's not there, I'm gonna push that right on under the rug.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that was a perfect explanation because I know so much about the Enneagram. I've done so much research on it and I know it's so helpful for me. But it's so hard to say to other people when you're like, oh yeah, but I like this personality test, or I don't believe in personality tests. Like, but you don't get it. And I don't know how to put it into words to get you to get
Yeah, what do you tell
Yes.
people that like say stuff like, "Oh, well, I don't want to be put in a box." Do you ever get
Hmm.
that
Oh,
fight?
all the time. And sometimes I'm not sending my pearls before swine. But for people who have a little bit of openness about it, I often ask, well, why don't you want to be put in a box? And that
Ooh.
really throws them. They're like, I was here for an argument, and now you've opened up a different door. So that's one of the questions I tend to ask, and so in a questioning way, I get to the point of the Enneagram doesn't put you in a box; it shows you where you are, and it shows you why
Mm,
you are where you are. And then, really, the Enneagram isn't just like all the other typologies, which we've already talked about, but because it's also a development tool. Like, oh, here's how we grow and change. And the Enneagram has all kinds of spaces that are dynamic for movement and change and growth. And so the next question, why don't you want to be put in a box? But also, do you want to stay where you are?
mm,
Or do you want to grow? Like, what are you using for growth? And usually they end up kind of saying all the things that they want, and I'm like, yeah, the Enneagram really helps me with all of those things. And so that's how I often help people see that you are in a box. You're in a box of your own making, and if you can't see it, then you can't get out. And there's all
mm,
kinds of growth and change options for the Enneagram. It's not, here's who you are. And if anybody uses the Enneagram like that, they're not using it well. But you can do that with any
sure.
personality assessment and just surface level work with that.
yeah.
But the Enneagram has those options that are dynamic and development oriented and growth and change and all those things.
So, can you explain in as you can? I mean, it's so the Enneagram is so lengthy, but can you explain how you use it to help people grow and develop into a better version of themselves?
Yeah. So when we look at the Enneagram, and so if you're still like, Ennea, what is this
Okay.
thing? So if
Yeah, yeah.
you've been listening to us and like, they keep using this word, I don't know what that means. The Enneagram is a personality framework, so it shows us this frame that we all have, and our personality develops as children to make sense of the world. It's just part of our
Mm.
character that develops, and so we develop this. And since we're here on YouTube, I'll be able to do this. It's like
Yeah.
glasses,
Ah!
like this. And now my glasses are yellow, and everybody looks a little bit different because they're yellow. And if I were unaware that my glasses were yellow, I'd be like, why does my deck look green? Because we have a blue stuff on our deck. Why does it look green? There must be something wrong. There must be a ton of pollen out there. I mean, there is, but so like the glasses analogy helps us see that we see differently than other people. And so as we start to become aware of our glasses and the color and the shade and the lens through which we see the world, then we start to make sense of, is this helpful? Is this not helpful? Do other people see this differently? So it helps with communication skills, how I make decisions. It helps. One of the things I work with a lot is conflict resolution. Like, how do we solve conflict around this area? I think the Enneagram helps us develop the deep skills of interpersonal growth, because that type of self-leadership requires ruthless self-honesty, but generous self-compassion. And those two things have to go together. And the Enneagram shows us those things, and it acts like this non-judgmental observer that's like, hey, Jen, you know what you tend to do? You get super freaked out when you're limited. So how does that show up for you? And then we can do something with it. So rather than judging because I get freaked out when I'm limited, it helps me see that, and I start to recognize, I call it the Ferris wheel, like it just keeps coming back around again. Oh, right, that's where I am. So now what do I do to get out of this hole? What do I do to prevent the implications of that are negative from when I get in this way? How do I develop through that? How do I manage this fear? How do I get what I'm needing in a way that's healthy and not a way that is harmful to me and others?
So what number are you?
No, I am an Enneagram 7. So
yes,
also,
I knew it.
I forgot to say there are 9 types, and they're all labeled by numbers. So if you're new, from 1 to 9, and I'm an Enneagram 7.
I am also a 7, so I was like, you are speaking my language. So
yeah, if you're talking about being limited, you're like, oh yeah, that's it.
Oh yeah, girl. I am here for the lack of limitation.
That's right. That's
oh
right.
my gosh, I love it. Oh, that's awesome. Jess, you ask questions because the dog is barking, and so we should mute me for the next minute. So go ahead, you ask me your question.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you your elevator pitch, and you kind of just gave it. So we were kind of interested in talking with an Enneagram coach or expert to kind of figure out how we can help our listeners use it to understand and accept ourselves. Like, how can we actually take that? Because I'm an Enneagram 2, and anytime that I go to, like, whenever I'm not feeling good about something, or I feel like I'm exploring, okay, what's going on here, I always go and Google how to work through this problem as an Enneagram 2. Like, how can people use it to kind of do that work, and what does that look like?
Yeah. I mean, so it's an ongoing process. And that's why when I'm coaching people, or I'm working with teams, it's a process that we're working through. And there are so many different paths we could go down with that question. But I think the one that gets at the root of all those paths, that takes you down really healthy ones, is the idea that we are motivated and driven to avoid certain fears. Like, I don't want to experience this fear, and I don't want to. And so it's not always feel pain, but it's always, I don't want this thing that I am afraid of. So, sorry, I had a kid come home. What's going on?
Sorry. My dog's barking, your kid's coming.
I'm like, the 17-year-old is home. That's confusing. Anyway, so we always want to avoid these fears. We're always running away from them. And so for each type, we've got these fears. And so as an Enneagram 2, this fear of being rejected, or feeling of being not needed, or fear of being needy. And then we start to do all these behaviors. So like, I don't want that thing, like, I'm avoiding that at all costs. So because of that, we start developing these actions that aren't super healthy. And so when we look at the fear, and how we grow is to say, okay, this is what I'm afraid of. Now, is that true? So in my Facebook group, I work every week. We do a live about what are the stories that we're telling ourselves, and how do we identify them, and then how do we pivot and change. And so I didn't come up with this model. It's from a lot of different people, but it's SNAP. So first of all, you just stop. Like, oh, I'm on this like, hamster wheel. And so I have to stop and go, okay, stopping. And then the next thing is I have to notice what's happening. How am I responding? What am I thinking? Just like noticing those things. Again, that non-judgmental, really, really honest, ruthless self-honesty, generous self-compassion in the noticing. And then the ask is this true? Is this story true? If I do this thing, is that actually what's true? 90% of the time it's not. We're making up a story. Or, ooh, you know what? I felt super limited when I was 10 years old and this thing happened. I'm going back to that. That's not the situation right now. Here's what's true. And then we can pivot and we can change our behavior and make a different choice. We have control of our thought life. We absolutely do. And so rather than letting things just like fly on by and land in the truth bucket, we can like, wait, are you true? You're not true. You get to go back over here, and like we have control over that. And we don't think that we do. Like we're like, it must be true.
Yeah.
And tons of things fly through this ticker tape of our mind until we stop the ticker tape and go, wait a second, and actually ask the question. That's the power of the Enneagram. And each type, we get there faster by using the Enneagram because it shows us already, oh, here's what I'm thinking. I tend to think that way. Is this what's happening? Most of the time, yeah, that's what's happening. So for the Enneagram 5, who's feeling, oh my gosh, I don't know enough to make this choice, then they can go, wait a second. I will always feel like I don't know enough. So how do I be brave and make this choice anyway? Or, just every number has their own stuff. And so they think that's the biggest thing. And then the other thing that I think the Enneagram does that's so helpful in helping people grow is giving us the language. Because half the time we're like, I don't really know what this inner world is telling me. Like, I don't have hours to meditate every day on a mountain and be like, what is my inner world saying? Like, how do I figure this out? We don't live like that. And even people who do meditate a lot don't all day long do that. I mean, many people don't have that lifestyle, because my kids would be like, hey, we have food. What are you doing, Mom? Like that's not how that goes. And my clients would be like, why are you 10 minutes late?
Yeah. I was on a mountain finding my Zen.
I was on a mountain, So as much as I do love meditation, I probably shouldn't say that. Too funny.
No,
but
we do too.
I do love that. The Enneagram helps us give language to our inner worlds. And so when we have language to our inner world, not only for ourselves, but then our relationships, I can express to my friends, my coworkers, my boss, my husband, my kids, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm feeling. And the Enneagram helps give us that vocabulary. And then it becomes a shared vocabulary that communicates that shared language of understanding to help us grow and move forward.
I love all of that. I love the way you explain things too, because it's with so much excitement and energy and analogies, which is my favorite way of communicating.
Storyteller.
Can you explain how to use the Enneagram in relationships? Whether so Jessika and I try to use it a lot to understand each other in business. And then we also use it with our spouses. But can you give insight on how to use that to get along with somebody who drives you crazy, or somebody you share a house with, or whatever the case may be?
Yeah. Well, a lot of it goes back to that shared language that I just was talking about. So understanding your own inner world first, because oftentimes you're annoyed because the toaster's on the counter. Well, why am I annoyed? I mean,
Yeah,
it's a toaster. What's that about? And why is somebody defensive because of the toaster? It's fine that the toaster's on the counter. What happens there? So conflict in any relationship is inevitable. Like we try to pretend that a deep, real, loving, kind relationship is conflict free, and that's just a lie. And it sets us up for failure. So to understand our inner world about why this conflict is happening, or why this confusion, let alone conflict, but just confusion. I don't understand why this is happening. So my husband My husband is an Enneagram too. And he was in another city visiting a friend who was in another city on a soccer tournament for my son. And one of my friends who lived in that city, I was supposed to go and see her, but she got COVID during that time. So nobody could go see her. And so I was like, hey, will you drop off just some flowers and something fun, just as a sussy to say, hey, we're thinking about you. Sorry, we can't see you. Drop it at the front porch, and get back to the soccer. And he described this whole thing when he got home, because he was like, I went to 6 different stores because I wanted to get the exact right thing, because this is what I knew they needed. And then they didn't have that thing. And he just went on and on and on. And I was like, I would never have done that. I would have been like, this is it. This is great. Here's some flowers. Here's a roast chicken. Enjoy. Like I would. But he was like, I wanted to find the right truck for the little one, and wanted to find that, like, just over, because he wanted to be liked in what he was doing deeply. On the surface was I wanted to find the right thing for the other person, but he was like, if I don't find this thing, the lie was, if I don't find the right thing, they might reject me, even though that's not how we consciously think. And so things like that happen all the time, because I would have been, without the Enneagram, I would have been like, why did you waste all that time? What? Enneagram 7 limited. Like, what are you doing? But then because there was this understanding, I was like, oh man, I'm so sorry. Like, I had compassion for him, that
because you knew where he was coming from.
And felt a little bit trapped into this like compulsion to make that happen, and to make the right thing happen, and the best thing for these other people. And so that's just one little funny story, but that comes over and over and over again in our lives. Why is this person always mean on Slack? That's our business thing. Why is this person always so short on Slack? Well, once you start to understand, well, they're motivated by efficiency. They're motivated by getting things done. They want to get to the goal. Oh, when I know that they're an Enneagram 3, I'm not going to take that as they don't like me because they're short on Slack. It's because they're just efficient. They're like, here's the deal. Here's what it is. I got to get it done. We're moving on to the next thing. And the Enneagram 3 can start to see that other people don't see it that way, and they can start to add that, like, we can grow and change.
Please
be stuck in that. Yeah, please. Could you possibly? I mean, and I'm guilty of that too. But
sure.
My husband, again, as an Enneagram 2, would never start an email with just, here's the thing. It would always be, hi, how was your morning? That's who he is. And so the 4 has a story to go with it. And I don't know, it's just like all kinds of differences. And that starts to give reality and fleshing out of other people's inner worlds that we only see this little tiny bit of that iceberg. We're only seeing that small part, and we jump to assumptions all the time. I mean, assume-icide is a real thing, and we start to spiral down and make all of these assumptions about other people's motives, when most of the time they're not the same as ours. So we're assuming the absolute worst, and because it's so different than what we understand, rather than, oh, well, why might they be doing that? And is that actually a problem? If it is a problem, how do we talk about the impact of that behavior, and without attacking someone's character, and protecting their own fears, and still allowing them space to grow in kindness? Like, that's how I tend to use the Enneagram when we're working over time.
I really appreciate that insight, because my husband is an Enneagram 6, which I believe is the opposite of a 7. I don't know how we're next to each other. And I think the Enneagram saved our marriage at one point, because I was like, you are a stick in the mud. Like, why are we married? And he's listening. He's like, thanks, hon. But I realize now that he's a provider, and he craves security and stability. And that is so challenging for me to understand, because I crave adventure and spontaneity. And so I try really hard to, like, okay, he's providing, or he's acting from a place of security, and it is work every single time.
Yes. But because you have that language, you now have so much, you immediately have compassion, and you immediately have more understanding. And so it's so good.
Yeah, my boyfriend, who I live with, is an 8. So, and he's taken the test and he hears me talk about it all the time, but he doesn't fully buy into it all. But it totally helps me understand him and kind of know the language to use or what might be going on in his head. So I can say, oh, like if we were in conflict, I would not want them to come straight in my face and say this, this, and this. He is totally fine with that. His
He's like,
feelings
bring
are
it.
not going to get hurt. He respects me more for it. So, I mean, that's helped huge. But the question came up in my head while you were talking of, so in a case like that, where, especially if it's a close relationship, if one person is totally on board and learning and the other person is like, that's really not for me, like, how can you still use it best and the language best when the other person is just super not interested in hearing the ins and outs of it?
Yeah, so there's kind of two parts to that. There is here's the tool, and I'm enamored with the tool and obsessed with the Enneagram itself. And then there's here's what I'm learning about myself. Here's what I'm seeing and growing. And that's the area of focus when your partner or friend is like, can we please stop talking about Ennea, whatever that thing is? You know, like, here's what I'm learning about myself. Or in this moment, I am noticing that you want me to just stand up and give you the bullet points and kind of be in your face about it. And that terrifies me because I think you're going to reject me. That's what I'm learning about myself. Now, I just said all the things about Enneagram 8s and 2s in conflict, but I didn't use any of that. Like, well, because you're an 8, you do blah, blah, blah. And that's fine when everybody's on the on a page, on the same page. That's how that, cliche goes. But when there's not the bigger focus of your pie there, should be on here's what and it really should always be, but here's what I'm learning about myself. Here's what I'm noticing about myself. Here's what I'm seeing in you. And I don't know if that's accurate or not. Or Brene Brown calls it a crappy first draft. Like, what's the crappy first draft I'm saying in my head about what you're doing? And the other person is like, that's not at all what I'm doing. I'm like, that's why I called it a crappy first draft. So help me understand what's going on and help me edit. Like having that kind of language, even outside the Enneagram, is really helpful. But what I keep discovering is when people are growing and learning and they're like, gosh, you're so different now in a good way. How did you get there? Well, I've really been studying the Enneagram and seeing how it's showing up for me. And that people start to get on board a little bit more because they see the impact. A lot of people who initially shun the Enneagram, one, because it's cool and trendy and like, oh, it's going to go away, or two, because what is this mumbo jumbo you're talking about, will be intrigued and then drawn in by effects, kind of like, I want to see that proof in that pudding, and they get drawn in a little bit. Does that answer your question, Jessika?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
No, I love that. Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
We've been discussing it at least 3 or 4 years now, like delving into it. And I've read several books recently and listened to podcasts and all of that. And it really has, it's changed my life forever. And I'm ever grateful for it because it gives me language, like you were just saying. And it even just gives me the language to talk to myself and realize, oh, this is what's going on, and maybe this is what's going on. So it's helped me to be more open and vulnerable in anybody that I talk to, so that we can like get through it. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's helped us too, because I'll be like, just tell me, like, I love you no matter what. Just give it to me so we can work through it. And it's like we're able to do more things with our business because of that. And then she accepts how sporadic I am and says, Sierra, maybe that's not the thing we explore right now, and we finish the thing we started.
What are you talking about? I have a whole new idea.
It's amazing.
Which is hard because I get all of the ideas too, and I want to do it, but I'm like, okay, I need to be the one honing in right now.
Yeah. We're good yin and yang for each other. So how, if someone is just getting started on learning about the Enneagram and they want to learn more about themselves, what do you have books that you would recommend or podcasts or anything to dive in that exploration?
Yeah, so a couple things. I always love to talk to people, so DM me on Instagram and ask me your questions. I love that.
What is your Instagram handle?
it is at Jenn_Whitmer. So 2N Jenn, JENN_Whitmer. WHITMER. There you go. So I always love DMs. Shoot me a DM and ask, and I can like give you all these resources as well. And I write about understanding yourself and using the Enneagram. So discovering people writing about it is always really helpful. And then I have the best way to dig into the Enneagram is really looking at the core motivations. I don't like Enneagram assessments. My big controversial statement. Don't go take a test. If you're just starting, don't go take a test. That's my controversial statement. And so I have on my website, if you go to jennwhitmer.com/freebies, I have a download that is the core motivations of all 9 types. So the strategy of each type, the core fear, the core desire, the core longing, and the core message. And so those are the 5 motivators that we all have. And you can download and start to look and see which one of these sounds the most like me and which one is like, oh my gosh, I'm even offended that I would think that about myself, like you can cross this out and that kind of thing. So those are good ways to start. I also really love The Road Back to You by Suzanne Stabile and Ian Morgan Cron, because I think it gives great descriptions of types. It's a great primer. Like, I'm just getting started. It's a short book. It's not long. And you can really see clearly to get started. Another one that I think is a really great initial book to get started is The Honest Enneagram by Sarah Jane Case. Those 2 books are really good at just introducing the types and some different ways to think about them. And they're just great introductions. And that's for people who like to read. And both of those are really good on audio as well. They're both good audiobooks if you want to listen to them. The other way that I think is really helpful are podcasts that are specifically people talking about their Enneagram type. So when Kara and I were talking about, oh, I totally get what you're saying. Like, oh my gosh, you're inside my mind.
Yeah.
And that's how it took me about 8 months, 7 months to really land on my number. And by listening to other people talk about themselves was the way I landed on that. It was so helpful, because when I was first introduced to it, I had a couple friends that were like, you're an 8. You're an Enneagram 8. This is who you are. And I'm like, I don't see myself as an 8. I don't understand. And I would read the motivations and I'm like, I mean, none of this feels like me. The way people respond to me feels like an 8, but I'm not motivated like this. And then I was like, gosh, that 3 sounds really familiar too. And is that it? And the 7, so I was just in, and then I listened. So The Road Back to You has an accompanying podcast that's 5 or 6 years old, because that's how old the book is. But it goes by type, and people are really discussing their type, and it's a great introduction again, and that was super helpful to me. There are a few other podcasts. Ian Morgan Cron has a podcast called Typology, and he interviews people by type. Suzanne Stabile still has a podcast called The Enneagram Journey. She's interviewing people about their type. And then another one is called Enneagram Panels, and it's a podcast that has like 3 2s are all on there, and they're all talking about their type and how it shows up. So you get to hear it from lots of perspectives, and those types of experiences, because you start to go, oh my gosh, that is exactly how I think. How are you inside my mind? Or you're like, that is foreign to me. I don't understand that at all. Or, oh yeah, I see how you think that, but that's not how I think about it. And you start to narrow down what it's like to identify your type. And then as you start developing, find good people to get content from, and who talk about the Enneagram and who use it in their practice. So I have one-on-one clients and group clients, and I have a Facebook group where we talk about how do you use the Enneagram in your life and business. And so find places like that to start exploring, what does it mean for me, and how does this show up in my life, in my experience, in my specific situation? What do I do with it? And that's how the progression tends to go.
What is your Facebook group?
Oh, it's called the Women Leaders Circle. So for all of the women, sorry, the guys, the Women Leaders Circle. I know, as you said at the beginning, the Women Leaders Circle using the Enneagram for success in life and business. And so it's got lots of fun people in there, and we It's really fun
Yeah,
community.
I want
Yeah.
to join based on
I
the
know.
things you
Same
said
here.
about. And we'll put a link
You
in the
are
show notes too, so
welcome in.
people can find it.
Yeah. And of course, because it's me, I was saying a couple weeks ago, it's like, if you're not into funny with depth, I'm really not your girl. So if you can't handle, we're going to do a gift thing one day, and the next day is like, what's really hard for you right now? We're not your group. And that's
That's us, exactly.
100%. We do dance parties on Wednesday, and then we'll like talk about really, really deep stuff on Thursday. Like you never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah, and that's okay. And I don't mind not being your people. I hope you find your people.
Yeah,
But if that
exactly.
feels like you, come be my people.
So, okay, speaking of the really hard stuff, we ask every guest what their rawest moment is that they're willing to share. And the reason we do this is because exactly that. Like we have a lot of fun, and on Instagram we can post all these pretty pictures and look like we have everything together, but that's not
Sure.
real life. So we love our guests to share the rawest moment that they're willing to show that, like, yeah, life is hard sometimes and you aren't always perfect, but you've overcome that. So do you have something in your life that happened that you could share with our audience?
Oh, there's so many. I think the one that is so hard for me, like I've moved past it, why it's easy to share, but the one that I keep coming back to that shapes me so much is what I call my gray couch moment. In this experience where we had this change of leadership and it turned into a toxic work environment, and it was so shocking because we just assumed the best about our leader and thought his words were matching what was inside, and they weren't. And it came out in all kinds of ways. The biggest symptom of it was conflict. And so his lack of skill and insecurity turned a beautiful culture into, it just devastated it. And we tried to protect, the leadership team just kept trying to protect the rest of the staff and faculty, and we took the brunt of it. And after years, literal years of trying to figure this out, like putting it in reviews and putting it in, like going to him and trying to figure out how to communicate this, and finally confronting him as a team, like, we are struggling, this is a problem, and because the impact's just getting greater and greater. And he decided that we couldn't have a second follow-up conversation. We had to have a mediator come in with us. And so it was a team of 5 people, 6 including him. And we're like, so we can't have a grown-up conversation, we have to have a mediator. Okay. We didn't understand why. Well, and it turns out because of his own insecurity and other things. And that particular mediator in this conciliation didn't really follow the rules that were established for the mediation. So on top of these years of manipulation and passive aggressive and all kinds of damaging behaviors that started to make me really question my own sanity. There was a lot of gaslighting and like, am I crazy? Is this, I really thought this is, I mean, it was so, my therapist called it crazy making. And because it was crazy making. He lost his temper a few times on me, but this particular situation in this conciliation, he lost it. And I can remember seeing the kids outside playing on this playground, and I am getting yelled at as if I was in a military school of some sort. Like, it was this surreal experience of, I thought we were all professionals around the room. I'm 40 some odd years old, and I'm am I in boot camp? What is, like, I couldn't even process what was happening. But it was also, I must be a terrible person. Like, I completely internalized it and was like, I mean, this is my worst fear come to life. Like, I'm a horrible person who doesn't think about other people, and I'm mean, and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have my, like, it was awful. And I came home that day and I sat on our gray couch and I mean, like the tears were gone. Like I didn't even have any tears left to cry, but just sitting there going, why could I even possibly parent my 4 kids? If all of this is true, I shouldn't be allowed, like DFS needs to come and take my kids. And I cannot be a parent. It was so devastating, this situation. And I mean, I was like, I'm going to get fired. Like that, there is no way you can go through this and not be fired. Why would someone, if this is all true, all of these things you have spewed in hate and anger are true, why would you keep me around? And so it was just terrible. And I kind of spent the next few days not knowing what to do. We went to, our kids were gone at camp at that time. Well, 3 of them were. And so we had gone up to about 9 hours away, gone to get them, come back, and came back into this meeting where I got fired. And he was so nice to me, y'all. I'm going to be really nice to you. And I'm going to let you have this job. So, I mean, his wife had been involved. I mean, the red flags were insane. And really, there was some, I could have retained counsel, kind of actionable stuff, not looking back. And I just remember, and he was like, so you're going to work from home. You're going to do this job that has nothing to do with what you're trained for. And I'm the only person you're going to talk to. And so I just felt like I was a pariah and needed to be contained. I'm like, I started calling my house Elba. I'm like, I'm like, here I am, exiled to Elba. And it was awful. And it took a couple years to recover and really see, it took a couple months for me to go, oh, wait, this isn't me. This is really, really him. And in my own Enneagram self, that's when I was really discovering the Enneagram of like, oh, here are the ways that I contributed to this. And those are not actionable, damaging, and harmful. They're irritating and they are contributors. And I absolutely had a role, but they are not what this is about. And this is toxic. This is abusive. This is harmful. And then lacking in integrity as well, because there was some money things that got involved. And once this grant money thing got involved, which is not surprising, there's always that, I was like, I'm out. I can't stay here. Long story short, after lots of therapy and working through the Enneagram, I can say those things now. Like, oh, here are the things that I contributed. Because as a conflict specialist, I'm always like, it is never 50-50. The conflict is never 50-50. Usually there's some imbalance of power. There is some imbalance of influence. There's some imbalance in the situation. But rarely is there no contribution by the other party. Like in that concept is it takes 2 to tango. That is true. But I am not 100% responsible for everything, which is how I felt after this tirade. I'm 100% responsible for all of this. When in actuality, I was probably 5% responsible, but I was 100% responsible for my 5%. And that helped me work through, okay, here's what I contributed and here's what I need to do differently. And here's what I can and should apologize for. And which was so minor that it didn't even really matter. I mean, it mattered for my own integrity, but it didn't, it would have all happened anyway, because this lack of skill and insecurity wasn't actually what I was experiencing, but it sent me into this space of Enneagram oneness that I didn't even recognize. And so that was really helpful when I felt like, who am I? So coming out of that gray couch moment of, I shouldn't even be allowed to parent my children, into I can help other people solve conflict and use the Enneagram to grow and change has been really powerful. And he also got fired later for these things. So that helps too.
Well, that's good.
That helps a little bit.
I'm human.
All love it itself.
Yeah. I mean, but so are the rest of everyone listening, and we all wanted that happily ever after. So
yeah.
Oh man. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for being so vulnerable. We really appreciate that.
I feel like a lot of people connect with that too and kind of understand, oh, I might be going through something like that, or I've been through it and I can use it for good.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing, and the thing I always want to encourage people to do, is internalizing harm causes you more harm. Like, you have to work on yourself though to figure out that that's what you've done. You can't.
What do you mean?
Just,
Can you explain that?
So all of the things that he said about me, I just believed them. I was like, oh, this must be true. And because I'm a person that's like, I don't want to just think that I'm all that in a bucket of chicken. Like, I need to figure out what's really true about me. But that this internalization of this is what you've done wrong and you don't understand and all of that, I was just like, well, that must be true. I just took it in like hook, line, and sinker, rather than saying, wait, is that true? Is there evidence of that? How do I get a different perspective and really consider, is this actually causing harm? Wait, I'm not the one that's actually doing these things. And that internalizing somebody else's negativity about you is so damaging to our own souls, rather than saying, hey, I'm kind of struggling with this, I'm noticing this isn't working in my life, can you give me some feedback that's helpful? That's a different story. I had a leader beforehand that was like, I'm just noticing that you use humor in places that actually lowers your credibility, and I just want you to know that
I know
that's a
that.
totally different piece of feedback. I don't care. I'm
Oh
sure
my
you
God.
identify with that.
I hate when I like listen to something and I'm laughing. It's so hard. I'm like, that's the only way I can get through. Like, I have to laugh through it. Okay.
I do too. I completely get it. But that piece of feedback was coming from a place of, hey, I care about you. You're incredibly smart and brilliant, and I want you to be credible. And people are ignoring this because of this behavior. And so let's work on that. That is feedback and growth and critical to development. You don't understand what you're talking about, and people don't respect you, and all like just these vague accusations. That's harmful. That's not helpful feedback. That's the stuff that you can like pick through the manure and find the one little piece that, okay, I can work on that, but don't spend your time swallowing the rest of the crap. And learning that is, oh my gosh, it's just vital to our development. It's vital.
Oh, I love that description. It's so, I think that like is huge for confidence. I've learned like a lot lately about confidence and like how it can totally shift who you are and what you're capable of in the world. And I think that's what keeps people, what like promotes a lack of confidence, is believing lies that other people speak over you, which are lies.
Yeah.
Such lies.
Yeah.
Well, should we switch it to something lighter? Jess, do you have a good?
I do. I have some lightning round questions.
Okay.
So we always do a lightning round.
Good at lightning round. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I won't be Monica.
You would be.
Yeah, we do a lightning round at the end of every guest episode. So I have 5 questions for you.
Wait, did you
First
just
one.
quote Monica Geller? Was that
I
what
did.
you just did? Oh my gosh, I thought you were just saying it, and then I'm like, wait a second. That was even nerdier now. Oh my gosh. Okay.
I speak fluent French. It's okay.
No.
Oh, we're
Good.
huge on it. Yeah. Okay. Actually, you know what? That just changed one of my questions. Okay.
Oh gosh.
Best vacation you ever took?
Oh my gosh. We went to Punta Cana for our 20th wedding anniversary when Hurricane Maria hit, and it was great.
No.
We went by ourselves. So we were in the Dominican Republic, not in Puerto Rico, but we did have a day where we were just stuck in our hotel room, and like we tried to go out because we're from the Midwest. When it rained, you go outside to look. And so we were like, go outside to the back, and we get whistled back into our room. We're like, oh my God. But the rest of the time we were there for like 10 days. We extended our stay. Some people had our kids, and it was just
Some people.
so much fun. So much fun. And then, oh man, all of my trips to like overseas, I studied in Oxford in college. And so during term breaks, we would go to Europe, and There's so many, but that's probably the best one. Me and my husband celebrating our 20th anniversary a few years ago. So it's fun.
I love it.
Okay. Favorite Friends episode?
Oh, goodness. I mean, the one where no one's ready is pretty good, but
Yeah.
that's a really good one. But probably the one with the lightning round where they're betting on the apartments is pretty amazing as well.
Yeah.
I always forget how good that one is until I watch it. I'm like,
it's so good.
So good.
Oh,
Like, I know, you feel it at your core. Anyway, keep going.
Favorite song to dance to?
Oh, goodness. Favorites are hard for Enneagram 7s.
I know.
That's why it's fun.
My favorite color constantly.
I don't like it. Favorite song to dance to? Oh my
That's
goodness.
so
I am an old school Celebration, Kool and the Gang. Love that song. So fun. Funky Town. I think I go back to the 80s. Hey Mickey, You're So Fine. That's so fun. You know, like all those kind of ones. I would say recent ones. Shut Up and Dance With Me is super fun. I mean, I know that's like 6 years old, but
no, I know, I still do.
It feels new.
I love it. Those are so fun. I really I mean, who doesn't love Bruno Mars? So I love his stuff, and anyway, so but those are my lists.
Good. That's our Hump Day Bump Day inspiration, Sierra.
You are validating my lack of ability to pick a favorite so much. Thank you.
It's limiting. What are you talking about?
Putting you in a box. Okay, so these last two questions we ask all of our guests. First one is because we love supporting small businesses. So can you give us, sorry, it's another favorite. Can you give us one of your top small businesses that you love to support?
Oh, my top small business that I love to support. That's so hard. I have tons of friends, with online. When you're an online business person, you have lots of friends with online businesses. So I think I'm just going to go local. And here in my hometown, we have this Mexican restaurant that I adore called Mi Ranchito. And I just love Mi Ranchito. So that's my favorite local business to support. I mean, online, that would be super hard. I don't know.
What's your last small business purchase?
My last small business purchase. Oh, actually a friend of mine who runs a online gift and jewelry business called Catalpatry Designs. And she makes, I'm not wearing her set. I was like, am I wearing one of hers? Oh, but I do have one right here. She makes this really unique, cool jewelry, and this is super light. I love big earrings, but she makes gifts for men and women, and we got this really cool box for our daughter. Our 11-year-old really loves collecting things, and so this box that's lined and monogrammed with her name, and it's all personalized stuff. And so Catalpatry Designs.
Can you spell that?
Oh, maybe CAT LPA. Yeah, Catalpa. And then Tree Designs.
Okay, cool. Because we will totally promote that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is, what is your favorite thing about you?
My favorite thing about me?
Oh, this is fun to watch.
I know.
I think my favorite thing about me is that I don't realize that I effortlessly bring joy to situations. I just find it and it's there. In unexpected places. And also the eclectic interests that I have that really, really surprises people.
What?
I could dig way into Friends, but then also really talk about an art film and the symbolism behind that and the depth and how much I adore, cooking and all of that kind of stuff. And then really love gospel music. And I just have eclectic
Oh my
things.
gosh. Jenn, you are my spirit animal.
And that really shocks people. They're like, and I love politics and it's all over the place, but
I know. I feel like sometimes when sevens talk or Sierra talks with another seven, I'm like, but I feel a lot of those things too, but I am so too. funny how that works.
Yes.
Oh man. Well, that's it. How are we doing on time? Oh man, we kept you at so close to an hour. If we didn't have technical difficulties, we would have been smooth sailing.
It's great.
Thank you so much for joining us and carving time out of your day to be with us. We really appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Are a joy. It was so fun having you.
Well, thanks for having me. It was great to talk with you.
Yeah. So what, would you like to send listeners to your website or your Instagram, or what's the best way for them to you?
The best way to find me. So I play the most on Instagram and LinkedIn, and then I have a Facebook group. So that's the social places. But the best way to find all the things that I do is jennwhitmer.com/freebies. So I do workshops once or twice a month that are free. You can find the Facebook group there. If you're like, hey, I kind of want to explore the Enneagram more. Do you talk to people? I do. And you can set an appointment there. All my socials are there. The downloads, like I've got how to give an apology download and the Enneagram download, and
I love it.
all just kinds of things. All of it's there. All the good stuff is there.
Oh.
jennwhitmer.com/freebies.
Yeah, and that'll be in the show notes too. So everybody can copy and paste.
Well, Jenn, you can expect 2 new members to your Facebook group.
Yay!
Really looking forward to it. And maybe we'll have you come and like do a live on our Facebook group sometime if you're willing. That'd
be so fun. I would love it.
Yeah. All right. Oh my gosh. Well, thanks. Thanks for everything. We'll put your links in the show notes. And why don't I've never done this before, but I feel like it would be so perfect for you. Why don't you sign us off or say goodbye in whatever fun and Jenn Whitmer way you want to?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know. There's so many options.
I know.
Everybody, go find something that you enjoy doing and come tell me about it. Go find something you enjoy doing and come tell me about it. There we go. That's what I love it.
And then before we stop recording, this is for another episode. We start every episode with what strength means to whoever that person is. So it can just be like a short 30-second strength to me means, or being strong means, and we'll use it for a different episode.
Okay. Being strong to me means that you have the ability to honestly examine yourself and the courage to change what isn't working.
Love it.
Perfect.
I mean, I know that's really short.
No,
that's what they are.
That's exactly what we need.
Very short. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so you can stop recording and just send that to us. Do you have Gmail?
I do. I have a Gmail, yes.
Okay, because it's so big, it usually needs the drive to send it. So if you send it